Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, McKeefery, and this is episode number 285. I want to thank you guys for listening. Appreciate those of you that like, share, comment. Just helps us continue to highlight the great people that we have in our profession. Also want to thank our sponsors and specifically Iron Grip for bringing this episode to you for free. I only partner with companies that I believe in both the people and the product. And I think the world of the group Iron Grip, put it in every weight room that I've ever had. And just think that they are fantastic people. So if you're in the market, please reach out to them. If not, just let them know how much you appreciate them being a part of the show. This week, I'm joined by Matt Solomon. Matt's a strength coach with the Dutch Olympic team. He's also part of Strength by Science and just doing fantastic work all the way around. And so I wanted to have him on the show and just talk a little shop. So thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Matt, we were talking a little bit off camera about some of the varied experiences that you've had. Which experience in your journey has had the most impact on you?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think there's been a lot along the way. I'd probably like to answer that with two things. I think until now it's been working in different countries, experiencing different cultures, seeing exactly how different people work and what I can take from that. And that's not just in terms of strength and conditioning itself, that's in terms of everything outside of that, how you move to a new place, how you deal with the organization, how you deal with different people within different cultures. So until now, I would say that's probably one of the things that's defined my career until this point. And the thing that I hope defines my career in the future is working with the Dutch Olympic team, which I am now, and specifically working with Paralympic athletes. So adaptive athletes who all require individual attention. I think for my future, that's gonna give me a lot of great challenges. And I hope if you ask me the same question in 10 years' time, that's one of the things we come back on as to how I develop my career and develop the way I coach.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the first time for me going out of the country and working, NFL Europe, it just opened my world. It opened up my eyes to a whole new, big, vast world that plenty of opportunity, plenty of experiences, and a way of seeing different cultures, different athletes in a different way. I would echo that completely. You can't work with the Dutch Olympic team without making some mistakes along the way. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've made?
Tough one. There's so many. I think probably the biggest one was one in Dubai. I was asked to look after a player from the first team who just joined the club, and he just come back from some military service, and basically it was just a bit of he was weak. I don't want to say it was a wreck of a player. He was an awesome human being, but physically he just wasn't there. So they kind of handed him over to me, and I didn't deal with him straight away. So I dealt with him the way that I thought the system was. And that was go through the team manager, talk to the player. You go round and about. And I got a call, and I basically got severely told off. It wasn't done immediately, and that was the problem. So I think, the biggest thing for me, the biggest learning experience there was it needs to be done straight away. If someone's asked you to do something, it doesn't take a day or 2 days, a week, however long. It's done immediately. So you finish your conversation, you get in touch with whoever it is, you deal with the situation, and even that day, the next day, you're training them, you're dealing with whatever that is. So for me, I think that's not a mistake I'll make twice, to potentially go a slower route, even though you think it's the right way to go a slower route to get to the outcome. That's definitely not the way forwards.
I think that's a lesson that almost every coach needs to learn, but there's power and vulnerability, and not having all the answers or owning your mistakes. Some people see that as a weakness, but that's so much of a strength, because those athletes get to see you as a human being, right? They get to see you in a relatable way, and oftentimes that's all it takes to build that trust that you need to be able to push the athletes.
Absolutely. And with coaches as well, right? I mean, if they see you, that you're honest and you say, hey, yeah, I didn't do it. I made the mistake. You can hold your hands up and say, but that's not going to happen again. I mean, yeah, if it happens again, then you probably get sacked. So yeah, it's very simple, really.
I agree. Well, you mentioned about, taking an internship, kind of taking a step back, but then turn around and making the most of that opportunity and converting it into a full-time job. Talk a little bit about that experience for you, but, some advice for young coaches that are maybe in an internship position right now that are looking for that full-time job.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a real area of interest for me. So I took an internship, not straight out of university, but I traveled for a bit, and I took an internship after graduating, and I didn't get offered a job through that. I got offered a job in a different place, but yeah, then I came back and took a second internship. So I've done two, and you certainly learn a lot more in the second one than the first one. So you learn a lot of the basics in the first one, how the organization works, all that kind of stuff. And the second one, I think for me, it was a case of really honing my skills, being a lot better at the details. So yeah, for me, it was a case of how can I help other people not have to do two internships, or if they do, learn as much as possible within that. So whilst I was at the Olympic Committee on internship, I decided to take a little bit of research, maybe, if you want to call it that. And together with a colleague, asked 250 plus coaches what they wanted in an intern. So I wanted to share very quickly a little bit of that. And yeah, basically for me, an internship hits 3 stages. And this is very general, very broad. But you get stage 1, which is kind of like a shut your mouth and get on with it stage. So you listen, you watch, you understand the organization. Stage 2, where you can make a few mistakes. Maybe you get some coaching responsibilities. You try and do some little bits and pieces here and there. And stage 3, where you really make yourself indispensable to that organization. So I think stage 3 is the thing that we need to focus on the most. And yeah, it surprises me sometimes that interns don't have a plan. Like if you're there in, let's say, week 1 of your internship, and you've not asked yourself, how am I going to get a job? Like, you've got yourself in an amazing position. You probably had to work really hard to get there. Right. So yeah, how are you going to convert your experiences into a paid job? And for me, that means making yourself indispensable. And to give an example of that, I think let's take an intern who works on a GPS. So they do a GPS report, and they're getting towards the end of their internship, and they think, yeah, well, I'm becoming pretty good at this. This is what I'd like to get on with, and I'd like to do that professionally. So how do you convert that into a position which is paid? Because at the end of your internship, you're going to leave. And if all you leave is a report or a dashboard, the club doesn't need you anymore. You've given them a dashboard. Thank you very much. Right. So you need to give some skills or some insight, which a computer or someone else can't do. So become an expert on that particular piece of equipment or whatever it might be. Become a GPS expert. Right. And try and find a way to make sure that the club can't get rid of you. So as an example, why don't we take the GPS report, and you need to convert the GPS report into things which the coaches can use to change their training sessions. So you've got the meters per minute, you've got the distance, high speed, whatever it is. Right. What do you tell the coaches which helps them improve their training? And that, for me, is going to be the position which you need to put yourself in to make sure that you're getting employment. So you're the value there and not the dashboard anymore. The dashboard is important, but you're the thing that adds the value. So for me, it seems like a few interns can come in and say, yeah, I'm going to get on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do brilliantly, but have a really good plan. And when you get into your internship and you find little pieces and little places where you can pick up tasks or responsibilities, try and make those things into responsibilities which the club can't do without.
Right. Yeah, I would have, pretty much ever since I started running an internship program, I would have close to 12 interns every semester. And I would give the same speech at the beginning of the semester saying, there's going to be 12 of you that are all looking for jobs, and you're not just competing against the other 11 in this internship class, but you're competing against interns that have gone before and after. And leaving some sort of legacy or some sort of skill set or even task, when you leave, that makes me continue to remember you and continue to remember your value that you had when you were here. And if I'm always saying, it could be as little as a specific cleaning chart or something, if every time I'm looking at that, I'm thinking of you, then that your name is always in my head to recommend down the road, and it could be as simple as that, or it could be as more involved in, as you're mentioning with sports science. I agree with you 100%.
And you can also be intelligent within that, right? So if I make a cleaning chart and I label it the Matt Solomon cleaning chart and I put it on the wall, you're probably not going to take that down. But every time you see it, my name's attached to it. So yeah, as an intern, you can do intelligent things as well. You don't have to be confined to your little box. You should definitely be thinking outside of it.
Well, and just to add to that a little bit further is, look specifically for things that aren't being done or don't want to be done. If you take on the things that nobody else wants to do, you're just going to prove to me that you're not you're not arrogant, you're not conceited, you're willing to be a team player, all those types of things. And we're in a service oriented business, and so if you're willing to serve, man, you're going to the top of my list. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned there is basically proactivity, right? So looking at the results that we got from all those coaches, proactivity was one of the highest scoring things which they want to see. So
right.
Yeah, off the top of my head, that was 4.2 out of 5. If we give them a 5-point scale, and 4.2 is pretty high.
Right.
You need to be proactive, and that's not just in terms of, okay, well, maybe I can fill up the water bottles today. That's right. Maybe I can help with the warm up. And why is that important? Well, it saves the coach time. The coach can talk with the technical coach. Right. So you're giving the coach the gift of time, and your proactivity, just one simple question, can have big knock-on effects. So it's not just the case of, I need to do this to make sure that Coach McKeefery thinks that I'm doing a really good job. No, you need to do this to make other people's lives easier.
No doubt.
To make the coaching better. Yeah. And all of a sudden, if you're giving people the gift of time, they're going to want you to hang around. Like you're the person who they want to keep.
That's exactly right. It's such a great point. It's such a great point. Especially, I always mention that you don't understand it until you sit into that chair, being a head strength coach or a high performance manager. You just don't understand all the bullets that are flying at you. But if you can give time back, yeah, you're my friend for sure. I want to keep you around. You talked earlier about you're from the UK. You've worked in Dubai. You're now working in the Netherlands. I mean, what that experience of going and working in different cultures, different countries, different working abroad. Obviously, you felt like that was needed for you to advance your career. But for these coaches that are listening, what are the advantages and what are maybe some of the disadvantages of working abroad?
There are a lot of those. There's a lot of both. Where to start? So advantages, depending on where you're from, there can be some brilliant opportunities to work abroad, right? So I'm from the UK. In the UK, there's a hugely saturated job market. I mean, there's so many people and
right.
so few jobs. If you're sat there on the UKSCA website applying for everything that turns up, like it's not going to work.
Right.
And I'm probably the 1,000th person to say this on a podcast, but it's not. Your network needs to work for you. So how are you going to find a way to get a job in something you love? I mean, I was lucky enough to move to the Netherlands for my now wife. But at the time, it was a case of, I really want to move and live together, but I also see a brilliant opportunity for my career because strength and conditioning at the time wasn't as big in the Netherlands, and it's still growing, which is fantastic. But I could offer something which other people couldn't, which is a brilliant opportunity for me. So where can you go which gives you a chance to work? And are you willing to go there and give it a try? Are you willing to go there without a job and get a network, build a network, and all of a sudden give yourself a chance? Potentially not. It might not be for everyone, but there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. So you can look at it in a way that it's a fantastic opportunity, new things to see and do. And you can also look at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm going to do this and it's going to advance my career or make me money, but I'm going to come home again. That's also absolutely fine. So if I compare my two experiences, the Netherlands for me now feels like home. Dubai, I don't think the plan was ever to live there for the rest of my life. And I think that's probably the case for most coaches as well. So what are you willing to do in that country? Are you willing to learn the language? That for me was a really, really big one. And to make a point out of it, the language barrier can be huge. So in Dubai, there was certainly a language barrier. My Arabic is definitely not good. And it wasn't good when I went out there. It's still not good now. So when you're coaching, in terms of learning and developing, yeah, of course, you learn how to coach in simpler ways, in using words which you maybe wouldn't use at home, which is fantastic. But also, you certainly lack something, right? So you lack a connection. There was an athlete which I remember fondly now. At the time, he just used to look at me, just stare at me with dead eyes. He didn't get it, just did not understand. And I had guys translating for me, and there was a barrier. It was really clear there was just a barrier. And I don't think it was because he didn't like me or I didn't like him. It was just because he didn't understand what I was saying. So for me, learning the language is a big one. And I compare that to the Netherlands because I've invested a lot of time in doing that. And the feedback I've got from my athletes now has been really fantastic. So the buy-in they have to the program is way better. If you want to and the timing is good, you can have a good laugh with them. You can make a joke. You can break the ice, and you don't have to set that barrier in the way. I mean, let's say, for example, you're going to do the heaviest set of squats you've ever done. You're going to PR today, and I'm there talking in English to you the whole time. Well, yeah, if you fail that first set, you're going to get frustrated and you're talking in English. I've got no research to back up whether talking in a different language increases fatigue. It probably doesn't. But as a mental barrier, whilst you're doing other very difficult things, for me, it seems unnecessary, especially in high-performance sports. So learning language would be a big recommendation for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would echo that, especially working with Chinese Olympic athletes or some of the other countries that I've worked in. And what I will also echo the fact that it makes you a better coach. I mean, so many times we rely on just the verbal communication, but you have two other senses. You have visual and you have kinesthetic to coach with, and honing your skills and how to use all three of those. Only it strengthens it when you're in your homelands. In your homeland, speaking your native language. And now I very, very quickly, when I teach, I teach. I'll say it, I'll show it, and then I'll actually make them feel it, the right position, and then we move on. And I think that's coaching at its finest.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're forced to adapt what you say as well, right? So the things which just don't translate, maybe things rhyme, and you've got a great coaching cue that rhymes, and all of a sudden you translate it to a different language. You're like, oh, that definitely doesn't rhyme anymore. So, yeah, the small things which seem really basic whilst you're working in your mother tongue, but all of a sudden you have to really think about it. It develops you as a coach as well. So that's an experience that I certainly wouldn't give up, and I'd certainly recommend for other people.
Yeah, making it your message more concise, definitely. You talked a little bit about some of the sports that you worked with. I mean, handball and cycling and tennis or table tennis. But you're also working with some of the Paralympic teams there as well for those sports. And I think it's such a cool opportunity that exists that a lot of coaches, I mean, when you get into it, right, your picture is the Olympic athlete running down the track and winning the 100-meter or, whatever it is, that healthy athlete. But, we all typically get into this profession because we want to make a difference in people's lives. And we want to work with inspiring people. And these Paralympic athletes are some of the most inspiring people on the planet, doing incredible things. And I think it's such a great opportunity that a lot of coaches, they don't necessarily think of. But if you attacked that as a career choice, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Talk a little bit about your experience with Paralympic athletes.
I completely agree with what you just said as well. So that's a good start. But so I'm really lucky to be working with Paralympic table tennis. So we have a very diverse group as well. There's wheelchair athletes, non-wheelchair athletes, CP athletes, you name it, as well as the talent team for Paralympic cycling and Paralympic hand cycling. So that's, again, a really diverse group. And if you imagine having the cycling guys all in one team. So we have hand bikers and bikers all in one. The programs are very, very different, right? So you have seriously different things and different coaching needs. So for a guy who's visually impaired, my visual cues all of a sudden are going to be pretty limited. And for the person who doesn't hear particularly well, okay, then I need to make sure that I'm really clear with my body when I'm demonstrating. So those things really bring out the best in you. But for the biggest thing for me would be how you see movement and how you interpret good or bad movement. So we have this kind of perfect idea of what a squat looks like, and I'm pretty sure a strength coach can look at a squat and go, yeah, good, bad, points, cues, whatever it is. But what happens when you have an athlete who has an amputation above the knee? They have a prosthetic and they're moving heavily towards the side of their leg. So they take all of the pressure off the prosthetic, and that's obviously going to have influences in the lower back and how they hold the bar, whatever it might be. So what then is good movement? What is bad movement? What do I accept? What is dangerous? And what trains the athlete in the way that I want them to be trained? So is there a limiting factor somewhere? Is the limiting factor their leg with a prosthetic? Is actually the limiting factor the strength on their good leg because they're putting all of the weight on that side? So all of these things come into question. It's kind of like this flow chart of information as you're going through a rep. So rep number 1, you're like, okay, do I accept that? Do I stop them? Is it good enough? Rep number 2, right, is this training the thing that I want? Am I getting the outcome that I need? Rep number 3, and all of a sudden they finish their set and you're like, oh, okay, what are we doing here? So in that moment, you have to make some really quick decisions about what you think or your interpretation of their movement is. And for me, as a relatively young S&C coach, this is going to be a really big learning curve for me. So I've been, I think, 2 months with a lot of these athletes now, and for the table tennis guys a little bit longer. You get to know the athletes individually really quickly, but you're still challenged on a daily basis as to how you can improve or optimize their movement. And I can't recommend this enough for S&C coaches, because I don't want to say it's easy to look at a squat and say, okay, this is how you do it, this is how you improve it. It's not. But when every single piece of movement is individual, you really have to challenge your own preconceived notion of what movement is and what movement you want to see.
Yeah, it's such a great. We had Sam Gardner on the show as well, but I spoke with Sam in Poland, and he works with a lot of the Paralympic athletes in the United States, and he just he had everybody stand up and do as simple as a lunge with closed eyes, and it just changes everything, right? Or standing on one foot and performing an exercise. And it's just such an incredible thing. And you're right. I mean, when you not only performing it was different, but then when you were trying to coach somebody that was blindfolded or couldn't use a limb, it changed how you had to present yourself. And again, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about, visual, verbal, and kinesthetic. I mean, you're having to coach in different ways and find it's almost a challenge in every rep to find the way to communicate that in a concise manner. So I think it's just a great opportunity to develop as a coach, for sure.
Absolutely. I couldn't recommend it enough. So I know I've talked about how that influences strength and conditioning and you as a coach, but the Paralympic and adaptive athletes I work with are probably some of the greatest human beings that I work with as well. So it's not just about learning, developing as a coach. It's about working with people who you really enjoy working with. They're good people, all of the ones that I work with, and I absolutely love doing it. So if you do have the chance as a young S&C coach, I think A, you can learn a lot. B, you'll probably set yourself apart from other coaches, and C, you'll enjoy it. Like, you'll probably absolutely love it. So I thoroughly recommend that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about just, why your motivations for getting this profession in the first place, and working with inspiring people, and making an impact. There's nothing better than that. And I agree 100%. I said this wrong in the intro, and I apologize for that. Strength by Science is Rob Pacey's deal, but you are the media manager for Science for Sport. And we just had Owen on as well, and talked to Owen quite a bit about that resource. I think it's such a fantastic resource that you guys are putting out. for the community right now, and you're operating as the media manager. And I just, talking to Owen and just knowing a little bit of the history, you got a group of guys that basically just got together and said, "Hey, we got to make a difference somehow. We got to make this. We got to make this concise. We got to make it in a digestible format. We got to get this information out to coaches and not just be a bunch of academics running around with lab coats, right?" Talk a little bit about the motivation behind you getting involved with the project, and a little bit about Science for Sport for people that maybe aren't aware.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my motivation initially was really kind of fortuitous circumstances. Owen was actually working in a gym which I went to when I was about 18. So he's from the same area I am, and basically no one comes from there. So it's a tiny place in the southwest of England. And yeah, it was kind of luck and circumstance. So I got in contact with him, and he said, "Hey, we're actually looking for someone to do some infographics." And I was like, I can't do infographics, but I'm not going to tell him that. So I learned how to do infographics, and that's how it started. Initially, it was just the infographics, and it's grown into more and more. So currently, I'm responsible for driving engagement in a Facebook group. That's probably takes up the majority of my free time, answering questions, making sure that people are being well tended to. And hosting a podcast as well. So this is nice to be on the other side of that for once. It's definitely nice to be grilled instead of asked the questions. So yeah, that together means I'm a busy man for Science for Sport, but it's really enjoyable. So if for the people who don't know what Science for Sport is and they're interested, it's, as it says, a sports science resource. There's tons of free content on the website. And the goal is to make complex things really simple. So yeah, there's loads of unreliable or complete rubbish on the internet about sports science.
Right.
So there's a need for a trustworthy and reliable source. And what Science for Sport does is they write the articles, but also reference everything. So if you want to critically analyze the research yourself, you are absolutely more than welcome to do that. But it gives a really good summary, and for me, it's a starting place for whatever topic that I'm interested in. If I want to learn about reactive strength index, I'm going to go to Science for Sport. I'm going to type it in. I'm going to find it, and then I'm going to read it. It's going to be good, and I'm going to look a few articles up to say, okay, yeah, well, this is what they did. This is what I expect. This is maybe methodology, which is important. So, yeah, that's for me the basics of Science for Sport, and then the biggest thing that they do for members is the Performance Digest, and the Performance Digest is basically a small ebook every month, and there's articles on strength and conditioning, youth development, technology monitoring, fatigue recovery, coaching science, nutrition, injury, you name it. And the people who write these articles are all practical experts. So they are all very highly educated. They're good at what they do, but they also practice what they preach. So it's not just the guys who sit there and they're going to perform some great lab tests. There's definitely a need for those people. I'm not bashing those people at all, but it's great to have people who write the articles actually do what they're talking about as well. So they get it. They understand exactly what that means to the S&C coaches out there. So it's certainly something that I would recommend considering. And if you're interested in the Performance Digest, then you can download one for free at scienceforsport.com. I'd certainly recommend, if you've not already done that and not taken your free copy, that you should definitely get involved in that. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic resource for one, and it's definitely making a difference in the community, which I think is, again, as you progress from a technician and a manager to an entrepreneur in this field, you want to find ways to kind of give back. And what I'm so impressed with by yours and Owen's story and then the others that are contributing is just that you saw this need, this niche, and you took action. And so many people don't actually take the action. They either complain, do nothing, or they have an idea and do nothing. But you guys had an idea and you made it happen, and it's gotten better and better ever since you've started it. So just truly appreciate you guys putting that out and all the great things that you're doing with that.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. The thanks goes to Owen, of course. Owen is our glorious leader, so we have to give him the credit for that one. But I mean, it's definitely grown. Especially I started at the start of this year, and I think there's now 1,200 people just in the membership Facebook group alone. So there's loads more people who don't sign up to that as well. So it's getting really popular.
We end the show with some resources. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
Oh, difficult. There's so many good pieces of advice. I think the biggest thing for me, and I'm going to slightly reframe the exact advice. So the exact advice was something along the lines of don't give 100% from the start because you've got nowhere to go. I think you should give 100% from the start, but you should keep something up your sleeve. So if you get to 2 months into your job and all of a sudden you're sat there going, oh, wow, I've kind of expended all of my things. There's no more tricks left in the book. My athletes don't have anything new. The coaches aren't impressed by what I do on a daily basis anymore because I've just impressed them from the start and that's it. What you want to have is every day impress the people around you and the coaches you work with and your boss, whoever it might be. But then a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long in, you want to have something where they go, oh, wow, yeah. And you refresh their memory about just exactly how good you are. So that was something that stuck with me. Just make sure that you have a plan and a few months into your job or maybe it's a few months after you start the season, then you have something up your sleeve where you can really wow some people around you.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. We'll definitely link up Science for Sport, but give us a book, app, and website recommendation.
Book. I recently listened to Drive by Daniel Pink on Audible. That discusses motivation and different types of motivation, how you effectively motivate people. And I think that applies really nicely to S&C coaches, and it's something that I've tried to implement in my practice recently. So that's my book. Website, Science of Sport. I can't not recommend Science of Sport. It may be biased, but I think it's a really fantastic resource. If you're looking for any sports science or strength and conditioning related topics, that's got to be the first place you go. So Science of Sport in terms of website.
Any apps you're using?
Sorry?
Any apps that you're using?
Yeah, apps. For me, the Polar Team app. That's a free app. Obviously, I think you have to take the heart rate devices with it, but it's a really practical tool. So I'll stick it on the iPad or whatever, and I can attach that to the television. Whilst my athletes doing conditioning work, they get real-time feedback on their heart rate. So in terms of making changes to my training, if they're not hitting where I want them to be hitting in a training session, immediately they can change the distances, the time, the rest, whatever it might be. So I can make real-time changes to their conditioning based on that app. And that for me is a big win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, like I said at the beginning, man, I think, coaches that take action and make things happen are some of the coaches that I respect the most. And instead of throwing your hands up and, pointing to a saturated job market in the UK, you decided to go to the Netherlands and Dubai. And now you're part of an initiative to make things happen, make our profession better. And every step of the way, you're taking that action and it's not only improving you, but it's improving those around you. And so I appreciate that. I know others do as well. And I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, it's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.